Good evening, T-Bird.
Good evening, Mr. 43. How you doing, mate?
Very well, thank you. Very well. What's happening, my man? What is happening? We've had a pretty intense few months, I would say, in this space. But the last week has been pretty intense because of all of the machinations that have been going on Pulse Chain.
Yeah, well, it's just been a week that's been fueled with fucking a shit ton of emotion. Um, yeah, and it's just been an emotional roller coaster. Everything that's happened with PDI, there's a lot of heated debate, and just around that alone. And because I'm on Twitter quite a bit, and there's a lot of Twitter spaces that are opening up, like forums of hexagons all over the place. People just in the Pulse Chain ecosystem, jumping on Twitter spaces and um, voicing what they need to voice about on the subject. And prices are still, the prices are still down, so it is what it is. But but I definitely see. Uh, yeah, it's only a matter of time before the sentiment starts to shift. The candles start to shift colors, as it were, and because we are in the bull mania year of 25. Yes, the first quarter of this year would have been, would be not meeting most people's expectations naturally. Um,
And that's key, isn't it? Because most people expected something to happen
that's
at
right.
this time, and when everyone expects it,
What does the
you should
market do?
yeah, you should expect it not to happen because
Yeah.
there's going to be people counter playing that, and you don't know how big the entities are. I mean, this is bigger than Pulse Chain. What's going on right now? This is affecting Ethereum.
Definitely, mate. Yeah, I mean,
It's affecting.
people just looking at what Ethereum has done, not even just in its ratio against USD, its ratio against Bitcoin as well. I mean, you look back over the last year and a half, 2 years. If someone said 2 years ago that ETH would be where it is now at this point in the cycle, no one would have believed you. Like, sure,
No, and
maybe be down, but not this much down.
there is only one person. I'm not joking. There's only one person I spoke to who maybe a year ago was saying that he didn't see how Ethereum could do well.
Yeah. Okay.
It was Blue Bum.
Yeah. Okay.
Blue Bum was saying a year ago. He
Yeah.
said, "I just don't see. There's too many," and he was spot on with this. His reasoning was there's just too many other cheap chains to play on that are connected to it, like Ethereum. So up until this
Hmm.
point, he made that call is has been spot on, because that is basically the reason, in my opinion, that is in part the reason why, um, Ethereum is not back at all time highs yet, and I think, as you said earlier, most people expected it to have at least touched all time highs.
The counter argument to that would be like, the main reason why it would have been so difficult even just a year and a half ago to make the call of saying that we were going to go down in price to where we are now is because of the ETFs. So when Bitcoin got its ETF first, this was around the beginning of last year, and then basically it was up only, like straight after the Bitcoin ETF landed, and then unexpectedly the ETH ETF landed very not that long after the Bitcoin ETF landed. And so the general expectation was, okay, with Bitcoin naturally just going up, just doing up only with their ETF, surely ETH would do at least somewhat a similar sort of pattern, but it was actually the opposite. So ETH didn't follow the logic of, you know, getting that that strong buy pressure on the news of getting the ETF, whereas Bitcoin did. So
Why do you think? Why do you think that was? I mean, there've definitely been inflows into ETH, but do you think it has been um, like OTC type situation where
no,
um,
I think it literally just comes down to Solana. Literally, there would have just been a massive. You saw how much action Solana got through pretty much the entire year of 24.
yeah, it was
Solana,
massive.
so Solana basically stole the mind share of ETH for the most part. I would say is the main reason for it. And you just look at the Sol ETH ratio chart, and it's pretty much all there. And of course, you had the pump fund thing that launched, which is, you know, pump tires on Pulse Chain is the equivalent of that. It's a much better version of it, but without going down that rabbit hole. But we can get into the pump fund stuff and the pump tires, more specifically the pump tires platform later. But when pump fund launched, beginning of last year, and that was already when pump fund launched, Solana was already on the move up. It already was well off its lows. And so the pump fund thing catapulted Solana that much further. That stole a lot of mind share. All the Jeets came in. It became just degenerate casino on steroids. And then, yeah, and the rest is history.
It's been a wild 3 years,
Yeah,
and it's definitely at this point we can still say that that it's rhyming, like the cycle's rhyming to this point. But
yes and no.
it's
Yes and no.
it's not repeating, it's rhyming. It's like
Yeah,
we can't say we can't. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next 9 months of this year. Because we can't ignore the macro.
of
Um,
course.
and I think I think with what's going on in the US with President Trump getting into power, and I believe that his tariffs um, might force the Fed to cut rates at some stage,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
the
yeah.
consequence of that will be the Fed cutting rates, which is the precursor to money printing. My volume's too low, apparently. Okay, let me see if I can fix that. Bear with me one
Okay.
second.
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, so
How
yes,
about how about
obviously,
now? Is that better?
yeah. On my side, it's a little bit louder, so I'm pretty sure it should be all right.
I'll
In
see if I
the
can. How about this? Is this better?
if the guys in the chat can give us a thumbs up to make sure it's audios are all good. I'm seeing some cool people in the chat. Some old school Hexicans. Hexican Lost in Asia. Retrostatic. Red Squirrels always up in the chats.
Oi, oi.
And Hans is in there. Okay, cool. Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Yeah. So we can expect you know in the next 6 months, 6 to 9 months, that maybe there'll be a bit of money printing. If that happens, historically, money printing translates into higher crypto prices. So,
Yeah,
there's that, and if that means higher Ethereum prices, it's probably going to mean higher Pulse chain prices and so forth. And the question is, I mean, if we want to have a quick look at, I might just bear with me one second. I might just do this and. Okay. All right. So, whoops. If we have a look at Pulse chain prices at the moment, we can see that Pulse is hovering around its all-time low price,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
a quarter of, very close to a quarter of sacrifice price, which was 0.0001 of a cent, and now we're like you know 0.28 of that. So that's it feels awful for anyone who sacrificed, right? But I think
Yeah.
we should put this into perspective. What it is, and people who have already bought in are probably sick of hearing this, but this is great news for anyone who hasn't got an allocation yet. I guess those people who haven't got an allocation pretty much get to buy in at all-time low prices
Yeah.
compared to the people who sacrificed.
But with that
You know,
said, as we know, like a lot of people that buy now that still wouldn't have any exposure at all to the Pulse chain ecosystem, these would generally be the people that won't start buying it until the green candles start to become defined enough to incentivize them to buy. Because as we know, like when it's at the bottoms, only the smarter investors or combination of smart and large testicles investors would put in at this point in
and
time.
large
So
ovaries, and large
yeah,
ovaries.
large ovaries as well. Yeah. So
There's quite a few large ovaries in the HEX and Pulse chain ecosystem.
definitely, definitely. Which is why it's literally why we've survived as a community. I mean, it was always going to be more difficult to maintain a unified community once we started to expand to the numbers that we're at now versus the size of the community that we were at, even just 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, of
That's
course.
just it just comes with the territory. But of course, when you're just seeing consistent downside action, it just further amplifies that difficulty when it comes to just keeping people under that united front. But
There's been a lot of chatter in the last few weeks and months about whether it would have been best to just stick with HEX on Ethereum and and not bother with the Pulse and the PulseX and the HEX on Pulse chain and Ink and all of this stuff. And I think what the people who are making this argument, I think it's a very poor argument because it completely ignores the fundamental reason for the existence of Pulse chain, and that is because uh, Ethereum gas fees were extremely high last bull run, extremely high, especially for HEX
yeah,
stakers.
and that even carried through into the bear market as well. People forget that
People
we had,
forget
but
you could.
we also had a huge spike in 23, like when it was still technically, mostly
Bear,
bear
yeah.
market territory, even for Bitcoin when Pepe dropped.
So let me just
Yeah,
I mean, to those who maybe weren't around, what was happening was Ethereum in 2020 changed the rules of how gas works for like certain contract calls and certain things. So previously, ending a HEX stake was relatively cheap. A few cents maybe, maybe a few dollars if the gas prices were higher. But they actually changed something which caused the price of ending a stake to go up like significantly to the point where ending a stake in the bull run or even a bit later on as we started to get the end of the bull run into the bear market, ending a stake was costing some people hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And in many cases, ending a stake on Ethereum was costing more than the stake was worth in terms of HEX, right? So
Yeah.
what that did is that sort of, and I mean, this is my perception of what happened at the time. I think Richard Hart was looking at it and saying, well, this isn't okay. I don't think he wanted to fork a blockchain necessarily. I think he would have preferred not to have to do all that work, or put in all that effort and hire devs and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
because some people,
Yeah. Yeah.
because some people
Yeah.
were suffering and not being able to end their stakes, and that sort of, there was that feeling of this is not fair. And I think he out of a,
No,
I
I think it
think
was there's a it was it was strategic on multiple fronts in terms of why he ended up deciding to do the fork, and I was around that time as well, and of course the gas fees were a big issue. That was definitely one of the major factors, and obviously you didn't want to see Hexicans in the community like suffering when you're in bull market territory, having to. It was completely unacceptable, but on top of that, one of the other major incentives for him to do the fork and was because for him to have his own chain, it's commonplace. Like if you are going to end up having some kind of serious edge and competitive edge in the industry as a founder of his caliber, you really do have to be behind a full blockchain. You can't just be behind a single token.
it would
Uh,
be interesting to ask Richard Hart that question,
yeah.
specifically ask him, hey, if Ethereum had never messed with the S load, and the price of end staking on Ethereum had never gone beyond, a few dollars at the height of the gas prices being high and all that sort of stuff, when Gwei was, in the hundreds, would you have still done this or not? So that's a question I'd love to hear him answer. My my I don't believe he would have done it, but I don't know. There's I don't know. I haven't asked him. I haven't heard him, but I believe that was like the basic. That was the reason why he went ahead and
Well, yeah, I
you know
mean, for the most part, that's why he went ahead with it, based on like what he was saying to the public. Like that was the main reasoning. But if you read between the lines, there are definitely other strategic reasons why he did it at the time as well, because he would have seen what Binance had already done, when they they did their fork of Ethereum as well, and already in like 2021, 2022, you already had like a bunch of ETH forks already, aside from BNB. So he's like, well, okay. He would have been like, well, I've got to put something out there that's going to be better and more, just all the stuff that he stands on, security, decentralization, privacy. So basically implementing all those features to make it better than so it has true competitive edge against all those other Ethereum forks, which is what he's done. Of course, it ended up getting relatively delayed, um, in terms of like our general expectations of how long it was going to take from the time the sacrifices ended to when it actually launched. But
was
we can also get into there. There is an interesting, and I touched on my own previous live stream on my own channel, about the
what is
NIM.
your channel for the people listening? Can you just tell us what your channel is so that they can go subscribe?
Yeah, so my YouTube channel is called. I only just started it recently. It's called the T Bird Podcast. And if you guys don't know as well, if you haven't seen me or heard of me on Twitter, I've got a solid presence on Twitter. My tag is at the real T Bird HEX, and the YouTube tag. Hold on a sec. I think it's just at T Bird T dash Bird 369. is my tag. But you'll find it on my bio. If you go to my Twitter page, you'll find the YouTube channel link to my channel on there.
Cool.
So
That's
yeah,
cool.
so yeah, I was explaining in my recent video. There's an interesting numerological strategy behind delaying the launch of Pulse Chain to 2023, which I found to be very interesting. Whether Richard, like, let me just like be clear that I'm 100% convinced that Richard Hart has, at the very least, a basic understanding of how to and awareness of vibrational energy, numerology, astrology, and how to utilize it to his advantage, even if it's just at a very basic level, like really basic level. But even at that level, you know how to use that stuff correctly. It can serve, it will, not can, it will produce a lot of positive results. And especially in the context of launching things like a blockchain or a coin, things like that. So
Now, I'm going to
yeah,
play the devil's advocate here.
yes,
So, as far as positive results go, price appreciate, we haven't really seen positive results as far as prices go in the last couple of years. But it is early days, as we were saying before. It's this
yeah,
year is not. We're only at the beginning of this year, pretty much. As far
yeah,
as a traditional 4-year cycle goes, we've got another 9 months, and it is yet to be seen whether
yeah.
this
But
cycle is going to follow
there's
that 4-year
yes,
trajectory
yeah.
or not.
And
We don't
speaking
know.
to that, and exactly so to that point of potentially the cycles sort of being a little bit off and not like exactly rhyming with how it's always been in previous cycles, that could actually work in Richard Hart and our community's favor in the context of numerology astrology. So even though you say, as the, from the devil's advocate standpoint, but we haven't seen any price appreciation yet, but it's not so black and white. It doesn't work that way. So as an example, so when Pulse Chain was launched, it was in the cat year 2023. So the next year that would have that would basically apply positive energy to the energy imprint of the blockchain of the Pulse Chain blockchain itself will be in 2027. And so I have touched on this on a bunch of different tweets lately, going into it into some detail, and I also went into it in a little bit more detail in my streams as well. But that's just the Earth astrology aspect of it. There's also the numerology as well, and understanding how the numerology synergizes with the astrology as well. So that there's multiple components to sort of navigate in terms of analyzing what's going on. So it's not so black and white, but I'm definitely
Yep.
100% bullish on, specifically, I want to be very clear about this, very specifically 2027. And this is regardless of whether the cycle can, like, whether 2025 does extremely well, as you would mostly expect, given the nature of the previous cycles in crypto terms, or whether it doesn't at all. And it's like, it's
Well, I want to
mostly,
give my perspective in relation to that. So you take that approach, that numerology. Um, I don't follow that stuff.
yeah,
I'll listen to everything, but I don't follow it. But from a just from the perspective of just thinking about what the market could do, and why that's possible, I look at from a perspective looking at HEX, right? Because as you know, I'm very much focused on, as you are, HEX and Pulse Chain, but
mm-hmm,
mainly just HEX. That's the thing that I focus on the most.
mm-hmm,
If we look at what could happen in the in this bull run, and then as the bull run ends, I think that what we could expect to happen is there has been so much for lack of a better term, death and destruction in the last 3 years. That
Mm.
I think when the bull market, when people can see that it's okay, it's this is done, it's done and dusted. I think there is going to be a sprint to the exit, unlike anything we've ever seen before. And what I think that's going to do, I think people are going to be like, they're going to be ending stakes, emergency ending stakes, short, like ones that are ending in the next year or two, because then they're like, I'm better off ending this now and getting what I can while the prices are still half decent. And I think they're going to end those stakes. They're gonna sell that hex, uh, anticipating anticipating that they can then come and buy back super low. And like they're thinking, oh, the market's going to be the same as it was last cycle for hex. The same thing's going to happen. I'm willing. Look, I'm not going to. I don't like making bets, but like, as just using that phrase, that I'm willing to bet. You know, I'm willing to bet that the next hex cycle is going to be different. It's going to be different to this one, because people in the last cycle were like just hanging on to hex and staking it and doing that sort of stuff. I think at the end of this bull run, I think people are going to be running for the exit. And what I think that's going to do is that it's going to only leave people who really are convicted and really believe. Those people aren't going to sell that hex anyway. They weren't going to sell it
Well,
anyway.
I'll play devil's advocate and say that by this point, like if you're still around and still like fully supporting Pulse Chain and Hex, you're pretty solidly convicted. Like, sure, there'll still be might be a couple of the couple of whales out there that will be just dumping a few small tranches here and there, regardless of how low we are now, but overall, I mean, we just saw the massive capitulation from Funding Gym over the PDI debacle, to the tune of like 1.2 million, which was
I
pretty
don't know anything
massive.
about it. I,
Okay, yeah.
I've heard, I
Yeah.
saw and
So
heard, but I don't know.
there were
I don't know.
a whole bunch of hexagons and people in the Pulse Chain community that were just just talking about it, and actually went into a Twitter Spaces where Funding Jim was a speaker, and he was openly and publicly talking about it and just explaining his side of his reasons, and because he knew that his wallets, or whether it's one wallet or multiple wallets, were doxed already, I think, years ago. So so a bunch of people in the community knew, um, but yeah, so that's just an example of like, one more, and whether he's going to buy back in, when or if he's going to buy back in. Just an example of like, there are even some of the OGs from back in the day who might even still be in now, are going to be heavily tested even now, at these extreme lows, mentally and emotionally. So, and this PDI thing would have sent some people over the edge big time. Which is,
I've seen a lot of your tweets on Twitter
yeah,
in relation to that. Um, there has been a lot of emotional, not from you, but a lot of emotional stuff in relation to the PDI. Um, you know, I just I think that there is so many things that you can focus on in this, on Pulse Chain, that I think that people just, because there's nothing else to, with prices down, there's nothing else to focus on. I think people just, they latch onto something, and
yeah, they've got to latch onto any green candle that they can see, basically.
yeah, I don't blame
Yeah.
anyone for that. You know, it's been 40 years in the wilderness. Feels
Yeah.
like.
I mean, it's literally like, I mean, we say it like casually, oh, yeah, it's been, 3 years, but literally, like, it felt like more like 30 years, really. Like I feel like I've lost 30 years of my life, the last 3 years in a lot of ways.
I feel like I've aged 30 years. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Look, it's been over 3 years. We're coming up on 4 years since the all-time high, which means we've basically been going down for 3.5 years now, longer.
Yeah,
About 3.5 years we've been going down, because the all-time high was like August, September 2021, and now we're 2025, and we're end of March. So it's been 3.5 years since
yeah,
the all-time high. Essentially 3.5 years of going down. So
yeah,
that is going to test anyone's resolve. That will test anyone's resolve. It's a more difficult bear market, I think, than anything any Bitcoiner has ever been through.
yeah. I'm just seeing, just checking the chat quickly. Shout out to Clintrons. He's asking me how much I align with the views of Waters Above on HEX. No, so I'll just quickly just address that. So I've been following Waters Above on and off for a very long time, and I've liked some of his work, and some of his analysis on certain things, his TA and stuff like that. Little bit of the esoteric stuff that he gets into. But no, the information that I bring forward is based on the specifically the GG33 system of numerology and astrology, which is be very different to the kind of esoteric analysis or esoteric interpretations that Waters Above would bring forth with his stuff. So it's like neither here nor there whether I align with his stuff or not. I'm 100% doing my own thing, not aligning myself with him at all. So if I'm gonna like publicly say, a lot, what am I aligned to with regard to the numerology, astrology, esoteric stuff? It's 100% GG33, and applying that knowledge and those understandings to crypto itself. So that I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, and a shout out to the people in the chat. Make sure you click the subscribe and the thumbs up button. We'd appreciate it.
Yeah, so I think much as just even if you're just talking about like the blood moon that we just that just happened on I think it was the 14th or the 13th or 14th. So there was always going to be a bit of a ritualization in March. In that context alone, there was some carnage expected across the market, which is what we've seen, and we're now getting pretty close to seeing March come to a close. And I think I saw that overall for the month, I think Bitcoin is actually up for the month. So we still don't know it. So okay. Maybe you can bring that up or go check it. But I'm pretty sure I'm checking today that Bitcoin is definitely green on the month, even though there's still a bit of time left. So it still might close red, of course. But if Bitcoin does close green for the month still, it'll probably be a little bit of a bullish signal. And from my vantage point, my opinion is this is based on observational analysis, my own observational analysis that I've seen play out when it comes to like the quarters from a financial standpoint, quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. What I've sort of personally noticed is you start to get sort of corrections and red candles towards the end of the quarter, and then especially if an end of a quarter coalesces with full moon cycles and full moon like lunar cycles and blood moons, stuff like that. And then and then when you come into the start of a new quarter, being April, that's when, especially if it aligns with a new moon. So once the full moon cycle is over, it transitions into the new moon, and then the new moon begins. The new financial quarter begins, being beginning of April, which is quarter two, and also we're about to enter in the context of the actual natural calendar, because technically the beginning of April, or at least for the Northern Hemisphere, beginning of April is the actual beginning of the year. So April is a time of beginnings. So
I think that's what we need. I think that's what Ethereum needs is a beginning. But like,
yeah, so
I don't have the chart, but I've seen this chart where, I believe the first 3 months of the year following the Bitcoin halving has always been like green, 3 months of green. So this will be the first time ever that we've just, I think crypto markets have had like, I think, on whole red, because that's what we're looking at right now, unless we have a crazy last week of March, which is also possible. There's
yeah,
been many occasions where on a Friday, the guys are on the DeFi Down Under happy hour. The guys are talking about how awful things are, and then by Saturday, Sunday, Monday, everything's completely turned around. So a week can be a long time in crypto, that's for sure.
yeah. Well, first of all, specifically the 29th is when the new moon begins. So the actual new moon actually starts right before the beginning of April. So that the timing of that, the coalescence of that timing is really nice. I've got a question for you. So if I came to you and said, well, because these are like some people out there in the market that are saying this, uh, Bitcoin has already cycle topped in January at 108K or whatever it was. Uh, so speaking to that, do you think that it's possible that Bitcoin has already topped and we're already in the new bear market?
Well, prior to Christmas, I had said that I thought that we were going to hit close, just under 100K before Christmas. That was like maybe in November, like 2 or 3 weeks prior. And I think that maybe, if I want to be, completely honest, 6 months ago, 6 to 8 months ago, 6 to 9 months ago, I'd said that I thought maybe it was possible that, Bitcoin didn't do much better than that this cycle. So is it possible? It is definitely possible. Anything's possible because you just don't know what's going to happen. War, war could break out. And look, if war breaks out, I don't think people are, I mean, I don't know what could happen, but
Mm.
I doubt that crypto would be at the top of people's priorities in that sort of context. But I don't think so, man. I think there's too many people who would be left, feeling completely unfulfilled and dissatisfied with, you know, a narrative that said, "Oh, the cycle's over." Like basically, all
Well,
you know,
as we know though, you can't exclusively invest based on narratives. Um, it's ultimately about buying low and selling high. So,
yep, absolutely,
um,
absolutely. I think one of the a big difference between like the previous cycle and this one is that all the institutional investment into Bitcoin means that what means, in my mind, what has pumped Bitcoin up is not the same, like the same people who have pumped it in the past. Like in the past, the people pumping the Bitcoin price have maybe then sold out of that, sold some of those profits into Ethereum. I don't know if that's the way the, these, institutions are going to play it. I don't know if that's the way they're going to play it. But I also don't think, and please play devil's advocate, I don't think the institutions are going to sit by while the prices go up. You know, go up to 200,000. Like I don't know if we're going to get that high. I wouldn't be surprised if we
Well,
drop out.
how high? Like let's assume for argument's sake that we're going to get like a proper bull run for the rest of 25 with Bitcoin. How high do you think it could go or would go?
I think if it hit somewhere between 150 and 200 would be that's a pretty big range, but I think that would satisfy a lot of people. It would also I just don't think that these legacy institutions would wait. I don't think they're going to be helpless.
I think for the most part they're in. Like
they're in, but they're in it for profit.
Sailor has just been aping the tops with leverage constantly. BRock is in. Choose the institutional player that try to find an institutional player that isn't in yet.
There's a lot of smaller institutional players that probably haven't gotten in. I don't think. For example, I don't think, like, for example, the Australian superannuation sector have really gone in heavy into crypto yet. They will eventually, but that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money sitting there. A lot of people don't know about the Australian superannuation funds, and the way our system works here. It's actually just money it's money for investment that's there, and our governments here are forever trying to plunder it in one way, shape or form. But it's money that they're always looking for, somewhere to invest. And I think these ETFs give them a pathway, because they're definitely not going to be holding their own keys. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean,
what are your thoughts, man? Where do you think it's going?
Another scenario is there could be a bull trap that a lot of people won't necessarily see coming, which would be Bitcoin starts to come up, it retests the high of 108 or just above 100, and it does a double top. But when we actually retest the high of 108K, or even maybe a fraction, and it'll probably poke just above it, sort of like last cycle, where it topped in April in 21, came back down, came back up. Everyone thought that it was going to just keep screaming way higher. When it came back up to retest that high, it very marginally broke above it, and then that was it. I think something like that could actually easily happen again, where it comes back up to that 108, or maybe say 110, or even a little bit higher than that, maybe 120, just to really get those get people really long. If you have it just retest the high, you won't get the most leverage out of it in terms of people that will want to get as many people long up at those levels as possible. So I'm thinking probably more around 120-ish, 130 maybe, if you're lucky.
Yeah, I can see that. I can definitely see that.
And then people start to go crazy. But again, even if Bitcoin even makes it to 120, 130, 140, what's ETH going to do alongside that? Relative to Bitcoin and relative to USD as well. So let's just say for argument's sake, Bitcoin does get to even 150, 200. If ETH if it gets to that 150, 200 range, but ETH only goes up to 5K, or something, or 6K, that's nightmare for altcoins, basically. Given like how where we're at in terms of price ranges now. So yeah, I think
Well,
it's more
from the all
it's
time low, from the all time low in the last cycle, Bitcoin was like around the 3K mark at its all time at its, I shouldn't say all time low, at its cycle low, and then it did 23x up to 69 K, and then it came back down again, down to 15. So I don't think it's going to do another 23 from the all time low, but it doesn't need to do 23x. You know, it seems like every cycle it's doing less X's from the cycle low.
yeah.
So the question is, what is there some sort of pattern there in the diminishing returns
I don't
that
know.
it's had in the past? But
But
there
but but
might
what
be.
but
There
one
might.
good sorry one sorry to interrupt. One good thing is that we pretty much all know that Trump has, from a macro side of things, has gone in really heavy on these ETH lows as well. So there's definitely broad scale interest in seeing Ethereum recover and potentially make new highs.
Oh, absolutely.
So
I
yeah,
mean, I think everyone. It would be hard to see. It would be hard, very, very difficult for everyone to see uh, the cycle, the bull run be over, and Ethereum not hit all-time highs and push through to at least double all-time high. Like, you know, it would be very difficult to see, you know, Ethereum not hit close to 10K or, you know, beyond.
yeah. But
But I'm
how
probably better
yeah.
placed to talk about what I think Hex could do than I am Bitcoin, because I think there's just so much there's so much like going on with Ethereum and Bitcoin that I'm probably not as aware of. And I'm not for a second saying I'm aware of everything that's going on you know, with Hex and Pulse Chain, but probably have my ear, you know, in relation to those than I do with Bitcoin. Even though I do have a keen interest in what's happening there, but I think that with Hex, I mean, look, where we are right now, I remember this price in 2020. I remember these prices, like where but on Ethereum, not on Pulse Chain. I remember the point 0.6 of a cent in 2020. I remember those
Yeah.
prices.
Yeah, well,
So
you're talking about the ETH BTC ratio
no, I'm just talking about the point 0.6 of a cent for Hex
of a
on
hex.
Ethereum back in 2020. I remember those
Yeah,
sort
yeah,
of
yeah.
prices. And then, you know, it's just remember zero point 0.6 of a cent in 2020, and a year later, it was at 56 cents.
Yeah.
So I think, you know,
Yeah, but
100x.
of course the paradigm is greatly shifted now. So you can't really talk about like just hex on its own, because we have two now, one on Pulse Chain, one on Ethereum, and there's been also a distribution dilution across all the other Richard Hart tickers as well. So you can't really necessarily talk about the price of Hex on Ethereum in the same way that you could last cycle, because the paradigm is completely different.
Well, I'm
So
talking about Hex on Pulse Chain. Actually, I'm saying like Hex on Ethereum went from zero point 0.6 of a cent up to 56 cents in the course of a year, and I don't and you know, technically Hex on Pulse Chain, this is its first cycle. We haven't had like you know, it started in 2023. So
Yeah.
I think you know, I think what Hex did on Ethereum in that year, that's definitely possible. I mean, we saw it happen. So it's definitely possible on Pulse Chain. I mean, it's possible. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I don't
Yeah.
know what's going to happen, but it's possible because it happened on Ethereum. And this
Well,
is,
the setup is now in place because we've seen like the massive amount of OA activity over the last nearly like 2 months, maybe not 2 months, just maybe about a month and a half ish since the OA started staking everything out for years and years and years,
mm, mm,
and massively reducing liquidity. Yeah, all its actions that it's done is insanely bullish for the price, which I think very, very few people would have seen. I mean, some people might have mildly speculated that the OA would have done stuff like that, but at least not to that extent. Like this is like, you remember good texture from the old days. He was a harsh critic of Hex back in 2020. GT, good texture, and he's actually pretty active on Twitter now. I've been following his account quite a bit lately, and he's very like explicitly bullish only on Hex on Ethereum, which I think is really interesting. But he was I caught him recently saying that um, yeah, I mean, just the potential of Hex, even just on Ethereum alone, is massive. But more so because of what the OA has just recently done. And he actually put out a tweet talking about how most people in our ecosystem don't even really fully grasp and have processed how big of a deal of an economic move within an actual financial ecosystem in crypto what the OA has just done. It's literally um, anyone that's been paying attention to it is. I mean, it's. And he was
well,
basically saying,
it's
yeah,
reduced the inflation that, users can dump with short-term stakes with regard to Hex.
yeah,
The
yeah.
OA staking is now eating up, 75% of what people were getting is now going to the OA, and the OA doesn't sell.
Well, yeah,
Doesn't sell
50, yeah.
Hex. We
Well,
should we
50%,
should clarify that OA does not sell
50%,
Hex.
50% of the penalties goes to
No, no,
OA,
no,
and
no, no. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about 50% of the penalties.
okay, yeah,
I'm talking about the daily payout that was going to
all
stakers,
right, right,
right? People are getting 25% of what they were getting before the OA staked.
okay,
So they were
gotcha,
getting like 8 HEX per
yeah, yeah,
T share, right? Now they're getting just under 2 per T
yeah,
share.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
the all that inflation that was going into the hands of short term stakers who were then like living off things and dumping it, constantly, they can't do that anymore. They have to
yeah.
stake 4 times as much to get the same amount of yield on a monthly
or
basis
or much longer,
or longer, right?
yeah,
Or if they were really relying on it, they have to sell some of their principal.
yeah,
So it's changed the dynamic of what was going on
yeah. It's
in
huge.
relation to the yield that was
Yeah,
being paid out.
and I actually I agree with GT when he said that it's an even bigger it's an even bigger event in Hex history than what happened on Big Payday, which is a massive statement coming from, especially coming from him.
Well, what happened on Big Payday, I think, hit a lot of people for six. I mean, a lot of people were automatically upset that they felt like something was getting taken away from them when that happened, because they were expecting to get much more in that one day of just being staked over the Big Payday. They were expecting to get a lot more, but the OA, as you know, some of you may not know, the OA came in at the last minute and staked all of its HEX just for like a couple of days over big payday. So that took away that big payday yield. It took it away from the hands of people who would have probably just dumped it the second those stakes came out.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what's going on now. The question is, will these stakes see the 15 years? That's a question. That's something, you know, that we can
Well,
you know,
even more. A lot of them have a good chunk of them, a huge, actually, a really large percentage has actually been staked out for that long or close to that long. But then, and you've also got the laddered stakes as well, which were long as well. But
will
yeah,
they see will they see the 15-year, like will they,
well, that's the
you
thing.
know, that's
The beautiful aspect of it is that if it doesn't, then the people that are still staking, that still will still have stakes, they will get the rewards if those stakes get ended early.
yeah,
So
exactly.
as well, so there's
They'll
that
get half the
that
rewards, yeah.
yeah,
Half of the
and it's
penalties.
yeah, and those penalties are big because these stakes are massive. So yeah, so that's interesting.
Yeah, because they're 15-year, most of them are 15-year stakes.
Yeah,
If they're ended any time in the first quarter of that 15 years, that's
yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of penalties.
It could be a mechanism by which the OA chooses to reward the stakers down the line.
A redistribution
Yep,
per se.
yep.
And what it would also do is reduce what the OA has under its control, which has always been like a bit of a, I think, an annoyance to a lot of people who come into the ecosystem not really having a like a background or understanding of the way you know, Richard Hart has operated or functioned. They've always pushed back against it, which is fair enough. Like I don't for a second you know, hold that against anyone coming into the ecosystem and saying, well, you know, why has the OA got all this power? You know, what we have to understand is that the system was designed like the system was designed like this. It was designed like this on purpose. So, you know, if anyone wants to play in the HEX ecosystem, you just got to understand this is a part of it. And the thing is that the OA, I think is just something to that will, I think the OA will have less and less authority over time, you know, over the long term. You know,
I don't agree with that because
well, tell me
I'll
why not? Yeah,
well,
I'll give you my perspective why I think that, and then you can tell me why you
sure,
disagree.
sure.
Okay, so if, for example, these 15-year stakes are ended early, that would reward the stakers who are still in the system, who haven't early end staked or exited. So if that was done in the next 5 years, that would see a huge chunk of that staked HEX go to stakers who were staked out for the, you know, over the course of the next 15 years. And it would see half of the rewards go, half of the penalties, I should say, go back to the OA. What that would do is reduce the OA's overall holdings down from 90% down to possibly somewhere between 50 and 75%.
Mm.
If that was to happen if that was to happen in the following cycle, in the following 4-year cycle, assuming it is a 4-year cycle, that would set up everyone's expectations. You know, I use that word. I'm going to use that word very carefully. You know, that would set up a lot of people's expectations for what the OA might do in future. So they might begin to think, well, maybe it is worth staking because if the OA does this thing again, I might be, you know, rewarded for my staking, and it would, if it was to do that again, cycle after cycle, it would reduce what the OA is holding, and it would be very similar to what Satoshi's bags have done. So Satoshi still has like it's believed 5% of all, maybe up to 1 million Bitcoin, but they've never moved and they've never been sold. Actually, I don't know if they've never moved. Maybe they have moved, but I believe they've never been sold. Right. So
Yeah.
if the OA was to continue doing that, it would inject more over the long term. It would inject more belief in the system, from the perspective that the OA is reducing its control. Because right now we can agree that the OA's ability to reduce people's yield down from 8 hex per T share down to 2 hex per T share is not, that's not fantastic for someone who wants to come in and stake and earn yield. It's like that, someone who comes in and sees that or hears that.
But ultimately, no one's going to buy into yield narratives like they did in the past. So
Well,
people,
we don't know. But I think we're making an assumption. If we think that, we're making an assumption, because I actually think
let me expand on my argument. So
yeah,
what I'm saying. So I think this cycle has been predominantly, so it's been a big shift in terms of what's captured investors, whether it's retail or otherwise, capture the psychology and the emotionality of investors coming in. Last cycle, it was the first DeFi. It was DeFi 1.0. It was like Uniswap launched. Everything that came along with Uniswap. HEX was like the first certificate of deposit. It was first trustless state, trustless yield and all that. So the yield narratives were very gripping on retail and all investors of all kinds coming in during that cycle. This cycle, the focus has been much more on speculation and price. And so there's been a lot of the market has gone in a lot of ways, from a lot of vantage points, has gotten a lot smarter, especially at least market participants that got in last cycle have gotten a lot smarter in this cycle on different levels. So the focus is more about speculation, ROI, over yield, especially if it's native yield, because ultimately native yield is not going to have any effect unless the price goes up. So
well, native yield has an effect even if the price doesn't go up.
It does, but it's
if the price stays the same.
If the price stays the same, even if it's okay, let's assume it's not going down. Like if it is going down, it's not going to do much. If it's and we've learned that now, like going through the full cycle. But even if it's just going sideways at a certain range where you're getting enough, like it does sort of offset it. But now that the OA has like cut it down. Even it's moving it in the sideways fashion, it's not attractive enough. So there'll be a lot of people that will be.
It's not attractive enough now, but like what you were saying this yourself.
But basically what I'm saying is I'm not worried about that aspect of it at all.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But like I have said on multiple occasions, I think the certificate of deposit narrative is dead. With regard to HEX, I think HEX resembles much more. I think it is a self-managed like retirement / pension fund. I think that is it's much more closely aligned to that. I don't think it is the certificate of deposit. I don't think that works. But I do think that I don't believe that the staking narrative, or mining narrative, I should say, in relation to HEX is over. I think it is.
I never. That's not what I was implying.
No.
If that's what you thought I was implying, basically.
Actually, I did. Yeah, I did think that you were maybe.
Yeah. So
towards that.
Let me clarify that further. So, HEX is the first of its kind. It was the first smart contract, and I don't think any other smart contract to this day has been able to replicate um, the beauty and the beauty of its code, in that it pays you trust. It's the most secure smart contract that pays you trustless yield in its own currency. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't seen any other kind of smart contract out there, whether on Ethereum or other chains, that has been able
It's
to do what and
yeah, nothing.
I highly doubt that they'll ever be able to um, create a smart contract like what Richard has done with Hex.
Well, the look, you know, the brilliance of Hex is this: it you take Bitcoin, and instead of needing to, buy miners, people they mine Hex with time. That is the brilliance of it.
Yeah,
You have to invest time. You have to invest time to mine Hex.
yeah,
Otherwise, you
and
can't mine it.
yeah,
That's what's brilliant about it. And it's,
and
a lot of
also
people have scoffed at the idea that it's brilliant, but
yeah,
no one else made it. No one else came up with it. People have scoffed at it,
yeah.
but it really does work.
It's the first
It's
move. It was a first mover
yeah,
in its sector, in the DeFi sector. In my view, it is the first mover of its kind.
yeah, using time
Um,
instead of hash rate.
yeah,
It's time instead of
but
hash rate.
one other aspect that I just need to express is, and this was talked about at some length last cycle, but I think it's sort of been lost in the maze of things in this cycle. So this is more for some of the new people that might be listening. Is the hard lock mechanism with regards to staking / mining with Hex is it forces you to it forces you into that mindset and that psychology of being a diamond hand holder, because and of course the longer you stake it out and mine it, the more that that, okay, this thing can't be touched for at the very least a solid percentage of time, but without nuking it and destroying yourself. So it literally it's codified to incentivize healthy psychological behavior. That's one of the things that I loved about it from the beginning. That was one of the things that really captured my
That's a good
attention,
point. I
because
was
for
I
me,
agreed with that as well. Yeah, I agree with your take.
delayed gratification is not just a time tested strategy for maximum ROI if it's the investment in the right thing, but it's about self development, because I'm all about self development, and a lot of the things that I've done in my life, especially the stuff I did in my 30s, speaks to. So I was already in a lot of ways living my life in a way that honors delayed gratification as a self development principle. And so when I saw that Hex fully honored that, and it's actually codified into its code, for lack of a better term, um, that was what attracted me as well. So it's multifaceted in terms of what really makes it what makes it a first mover. Um,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, but just on that point, like of the yield component, like the reason you would lock it up is because of the yield, right?
yes,
And but I think that right now that's taken a bit of a hit, that narrative, hasn't it? But I think that narrative will come back,
yes. Of course it
and
will. Of course
yeah,
it will. It will come back when the green candles start coming back, because
well, it can also come back.
all of a sudden all of a sudden the prices will go up, and they'll be like, oh shit. And the people will be like, oh shit, if I had just just bought and staked on the lows, and they'll see the compounded gains as the green candles start to flood in.
Well, the OA has
You
a
know,
mechanism by which it can incentivize staking again. And that is to periodically, once the bull market is over and we're heading down, to periodically emergency end stake, thereby rewarding those who haven't emergency end staked. And it can do it periodically.
Yeah.
And if it did that periodically, it would even perhaps incentivize people to then go and stake, because they're like, well, if I stake, I might get some of this OA goodness in terms of the end
Yeah. Yeah.
state
Yeah.
penalties.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
the OA was to do that sporadically for a couple of years, I mean, can you imagine how like that would get people interested, potentially blunting the downward trend, because people would need to buy the hex, right, to stake it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what it might mean is I actually believe that we are going to have in hex, we're going to have one of the biggest blow off tops like ever in crypto.
Yeah, yeah,
I think
and
we're going to have.
and just so I don't lose this thought, so just speaking to exactly what you're saying in terms of the extreme blow off top on at the upside. So let me. I know you might not necessarily be too interested in numerology and astrology, that side of things, but all that stuff personally it intrigues me a lot, and especially in how it relates and applies to crypto, but well, even more specifically with Hex. So Hex itself was EHEX, like Hex on Ethereum, December 2nd, 2019, launch day. So it was launched on an 8 universal day, and 8 is the number of money and power. But 8 is also like one of the key aspects of 8 energy is extremes to the up and extremes to the down. There's never anything in between, especially in the context of money. So I find it very interesting that it happened to launch on an 8 universal day, and we've seen for years the level of extreme volatility both to the upside and to the downside. Interesting, right? So that's not a coincidence to me. Like,
It can be quite common in crypto, but yeah, that's interesting, man. That's
yeah,
interesting. Um, yeah, so I think that I expect that this, for Hex at least, I expect there to be like an almighty blow off top. I really think it's going to be like the FOMO is going to be real, and I think it's going to blow off real hard. And then once it comes off that blow off top, I think we're going to see a sprint for the exit unlike anything we've ever seen before, right? I think there's going to be emergency end stakes. There's going to be every which way that people can get out. They're going to try and get out at that point, because they're going to have fresh in their mind what happened after the last all-time high in Hex. They're going to have that fresh in their mind. They're like, I'm not going to be here for another 3 years. I'm not going to do this again, right?
yeah,
And I think a lot of people are going to be thinking that. But this is where the OA, after all that stuff has played out, like after, you know, maybe it will be 6 months, a year, and everyone who wanted to get out gets out, that's when the OA will have this ability in as far as from what I think, I think the OA will have the ability then to entice people to come back in and stake by doing these EESs. Is it going to happen? I don't know. No one knows, because how can you tell what the OA is going to do? Very hard to predict. But that could be a play for the OA to get people interested in staking again. And then if people
yeah.
need to then go and buy the hex, you know, this was
Oh,
sort of
I've got a question for you. Um,
yes.
do you think we'll ever get major centralized exchange listings for Hex and Pulse chain tickers?
Not in the short term. I don't think.
Hey, I think we've lost. We've got 43 that's just tapped out. Everyone in the chat, can you still see me? Type anything into the comments, into the chat, just to let me know that my audio is still good. Are you there, 43? I think I've lost you. You jumped out. I can see you there, but don't have your audio. Can't hear anything. Okay, so you can still see me. I saw. Yeah, I'm not seeing. Okay. So my audio is coming through, but I actually can't hear anything from 43 side. If he's talking, I don't know if 43 can hear me.
Okay, how about now?
Okay, yeah, I've got you now. I can hear.
Okay, I just said, I've been hacked, mate. I've been hacked. Hackers.
Yeah, what's going on, mate? What happened there?
Hackers.
Okay.
They got into my system. Luckily, this is a throwaway system.
Good to see everyone in the chat. Yeah, Rusty, the Apnian. Who else we got there? Yeah, we've got some cool people up in the chat.
I remember there's Doc Lover 100. I remember like the first time I saw that, I thought it was Do Clover 100. Yeah, yeah, I think there's going to be a blow off top. One of the predictions from the last cycle was that HEX was going to be like this hedge against the bear market. I don't, that was obviously not the case. But when a bear market comes, a bear market comes. It's going to come. But are we going to go down 99 point whatever we went down this time? I don't think we're going to replicate that downside again.
And yeah, and also it's so good. It is so good that the liquidity has thinned so much. So when it comes to whales or even sharks wanting to exit out here at these lows, they have to cop it hard in slippage. Even if they're market dumping, in small clips, even in smaller clips, they're going to get hit hard in slippage, which is like going to mostly disincentivize them to just to ape on the sell button. So you really need to see that the thin liquidity. The thin liquidity is not just good in the context of being able to make it easier to pump. So when the green candles kick in, but it also makes it more difficult for whales and sharks to exit for that reason as well. So, like I said before, we've got the optimum setup now. With everything that's happened over the last 2 months, for everything to start to and the SEC thing is like it's resolved. Like even though we've got this silly little 30-day extension crap, which basically doesn't mean anything. And with some of the updates that I've seen on that over the last couple of days, it's just the SEC is clutching at straws. They've got no leg to stand on, even with this stupid extension. So the SEC, it's huge to have that SEC win, and I think it's pretty much. I mean, you saw the pump that happened, like when that news broke, and then it's just been, obviously, a bit of a sell the news. So the news came out, initial pump, and now we're just seeing the correction off that. So, which you would sort of expect to see with a sort of a buy the rumor, sell the news type of an event. And now I think we're starting to round off nicely now. the rounding off part. So the damage from that kind of sell the news, okay, the SEC thing is done. So now we can start sort of rolling upwards, curving
It would be
upwards.
nice to see the Interpol stuff
Yeah,
also
but
get
like,
get
but
sorted.
everyone pretty much knows that the SEC, especially at least in the context of crypto, the SEC thing was the big one, and pretty much everyone knows that the whole Interpol thing is a total sham. The charges that they're trying to lay on him are just complete crap. But
I'd really
obviously,
like to see.
obviously, he still has to exercise, take his precautionary measures, and do the things that he needs to do
I'd like to
to,
see a Tucker Carlson interview, because if you think about Tucker Carlson,
yeah,
he's sort of been delving into the crypto sphere a bit. Like he did an interview
yeah,
with,
and he interviewed Roger Ver. Yeah, I saw
but he
that.
also interviewed
Yeah,
SBF.
yeah, yeah,
So you would think that someone like Richard Hart, given his circumstances over the last year, in relation to the SEC, in relation to Interpol, that would be a. Can you imagine Tucker Carlson, interviewing someone who's has a red notice on them? Like that would be something that he might actually be interested in. Someone who is, wanted, most wanted.
yeah. But the thing is, like, the logical thing would be, oh yeah, like if Tucker Carlson actually reached out to Richard, but whether Richard would actually respond, like the odds of that, probably 50-50 at best. Like I would probably lean towards he wouldn't respond to it, even if someone like Tucker Carlson reached out to him to do an interview, because I just think in general, I would say at the very least till the end of April, Richard would still be like until this absolutely ridiculous 30-day extension thing is 100% behind. So there's basically no like just extenuating like thing that the SEC can still try to throw to keep it going, to drag it out.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what they amend, and then it's going to be
Well,
interesting to.
they haven't even brought forth like any actual amendments in the context of, from the
Yeah.
legal standpoint, in the context of the extension. They're just like, oh, give us an extension. We don't have any, like, we haven't put any amendments together, but just give us the extension. Like, it's just.
Well, one of their reasons that they gave for wanting an extension is because, and it's in their reasons that Richard Hart's legal team wanted to meet with them and they haven't had time to meet with them. That was one of the reasons they actually used. So
Just another narrative. Like it's
yeah,
just,
perhaps.
yeah.
But I'm interested to see what they include, and then I'm interested to hear what the judge's response is to those amendments, because she was very thorough in her dismissal. She did.
Oh
She went
yeah,
above
like
and beyond and really
yeah,
laid
like
out.
you couldn't have gotten a bigger victory than what Richard got.
Yeah, she was
Literally.
like, "This, there is no jurisdiction, but even if there was, there is no case here."
Yeah, there's
Right?
no
That's
fraud.
essentially what she sort of said,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yep.
So that's why I'm interested to hear what they. It might just be one big nothing burger, but it would be strange that the SEC, after getting that response from the judge, would still like try and waste her time in that way.
Yeah,
Like it's
and especially in the context of Trump being in office now and doing the full overhaul of the SEC as well, with the new SEC regime too. It really doesn't make sense in that context as well. So, but anyway, like there's nothing they can do. It's all in Richard's favor, and it also wouldn't surprise me if Richard starts to, start to pull some levers, some legal levers of his own, in the context of reciprocity, as it were.
vindictive reciprocity.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Even though that's not him. That's not his nature. It's not his energy. But we are in the
Uh,
snake. But we are in the
uh,
snake. We are in the we are in the snake here, and he is vindicated to do something like that. So
well, if you've ever seen the
it wouldn't
second
surprise me.
uh, McCormack interview, you would say that he doesn't mind clapping back.
Can you imagine like the amount of receipts that Richard would have compiled over the years to his legal team of all the slander, all the defamation, all the libel? It's like the list would be endless. And I'll never forget. This was like already like maybe over 2 years ago. Can't remember exactly when, but it was a long time ago. When he put out a tweet saying something along the lines of, uh, and this was speaking to the community at the time, to basically in the comment section put down as many uh,
Yeah, I
examples, like
remember that.
written examples of people that have been libelous or slanderous against him and his ecosystem for his legal team. And that was back then. That was like, I mean, that could be actually even close to 3 years ago now. A
Well, I mean,
long time ago.
he's been on the receiving end of hate since the beginning. I mean, the very, very beginning. I mean, there was a stream that he did with lawyers. You know, if you go back and look at the date of that stream, it's from when Hex launched. And the stream went for hours, where he's just debating lawyers, going back and forth with lawyers
Yeah,
and Tone
yeah,
Vays, and they're just going. And he was so well prepared back then on its
yeah,
launch.
yeah,
From the perspective of what a security is and avoiding, you know, doing anything that would make it a security. He was already well prepared back then,
yeah.
to the
And
point
I'm
where
telling you,
even.
like, yeah. Sorry to quickly interrupt. Just to say, if in case Richard Hart is watching this, uh, if you're going to do a retribution tour, this is the year to do it. At least from an energetic standpoint. So I'll just leave it there.
Well, what was funny in that stream is that at the end, when they're there, one of the lawyers actually says, "Look, I don't agree with what you've done, but if you have done it in the way that you're describing, I wish you the best of luck." Like, so that even the lawyer was like lining his arguments with caveats, at the end of sitting there like spitting venom for like 4 hours. So, um, look, the proof's in the pudding. We'll see how this all pans out. But what I think I just want to touch on the Interpol stuff. So from what I understand, the charges, the Interpol, what's listed on the Interpol charges is aggravated tax fraud and
No,
some.
yeah, or tax fraud and aggravated assault, I think.
No, aggravated tax fraud and assault.
Oh, okay.
So it's actually weird wording. Like, what's aggravated tax fraud? Like, what's
Yeah. I
aggravated tax fraud? It's
yeah,
it's
and
weird. It's
I
weird,
mean,
right? So
they're not going to get him on the tax thing because
no, but
there's
it's
so much
interesting.
there's so much grey with regard to crypto. It's just not going to, especially now with the massive overhaul with Trump in office and everything.
Well, I
Um,
think it's, but not only that. I think it's because we're talking about Finland. Apparently, that came, like, from what I've heard from some of the
yeah,
people, that came out of Finland. There was a
yeah. It's
detective,
Finland.
and not
It's
much
Finland.
info has been. They haven't given much info, but that whole thing came out of Finland.
Yeah,
But what's interesting is Finland's in the EU, right? So
yeah,
Finland's in the EU, and it has double tax avoidance treaties with many, many countries. So why is that relevant? Well, it could be, and I'm speculating here. I have no inside knowledge at all. I'm just speculating of why this might be a nothing burger. Finland might just see this as, a chance or being opportunistic way of, trying to get some money out of Richard Hart. Right? That's governments can be like that, and who knows if they got like a message from an SEC lawyer or something, to tell them, hey, why don't you, try this out. But double tax avoidance treaties are very common between countries. So Finland might be going after him for something, but he might have legitimate structures in place in other countries which Finland would have to abide by. They'd have to abide by the rules of that country if the entity is in that country. So it really just depends what's in these tax avoidance, double tax avoidance treaties. If this is in fact what's going on, and it could be, because as I said, Finland's in the EU. It's got a lot of double tax avoidance treaties throughout the world with other countries, and they can be used to avoid getting. You can use them to your benefit if you know what you're doing, and you've got good lawyers.
But knowing Richard, like he would have had all that strategies planned out to to basically just route around all that stuff very easily. He's no fool. And on top of that, like the really just dodgy, sinister aspect of it is they're trying to get him for assault, which anyone who knows him knows that like that's not going to stick. So yeah, it's to me, Interpol is nothing burger. The SEC thing was the bigger thing. How the outcome of the Interpol thing, how that's going to play out, it's hard to say, and whether how much will that contribute to Richard remaining in the shadows for the most part, also hard to say. But in my opinion, I think once we get to sort of late April, in about a month from now, Richard might just suddenly just appear out of nowhere, and then that's when everything will start to go, oh shit. It's like, because you look at like the vast majority of people have written off the possibility of him coming back and showing himself because he's been away for so long.
And I think the community has gotten used to him being away.
Yeah.
Now I think we've gotten used to it, and it might be the move for him to stay away. Like, and if he wants to communicate anything, just do a video and upload it, but not necessarily live stream. I don't know what the upside is for live streaming. For him personally, I'm saying, like, I don't know what the upside is.
Well, I think the upside is like just general morale. Like when it comes to a founder, like any crypto community generally just likes.
But you can achieve that without a live stream.
Yeah, but like even if it's just like the very occasional like live stream.
What he did an upload at Christmas, a 1 hour upload. Even something like that is I think more than enough. Like I think that it doesn't need to be a live stream. Like it doesn't need to be.
Yeah. And also you could argue it's in his interest also in the context of price to stay low key until like green candles start to come back. So he's actually got even that much more incentive to start getting back on that circuit. Because once you start to see, weekly green candles, it's like, okay, you can start to actually, just a little bit, do a bit more bragging. The lows are in. Look how much they tried to FUD us, and all the the talking points that you would expect to shove it into the haters' faces, sort of thing. So so he would be waiting a bit for that as well. I would suspect. So hey, I just checked the clock and it's 11:11. That's pretty cool.
There you go. Is it a sign?
Yeah. 11:11 is when you happen to
And we've got
notice that.
22 viewers as well. So 11:11 and 22 viewers. There you go. I don't know what that
Oh,
means, but it
yeah,
adds up.
11:11 means you're evolved. When you see that, it means you're evolving. It's basically the matrix speaking at you, saying that you're evolving. But yeah, all different numbers have different messages, so different meanings. So yeah, it's all master number energy as well. 11 and 22 are both master numbers. So I don't know if you've seen, but in the chat, Doc Love is in there. Did you see that?
Yeah. That's why I mentioned it.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, he's got a couple of good comments in there, I think.
Which one?
Yeah, there's one where he says, I've been in the ecosystem from the start and I'm not a dolphin, but it's getting very tricky to keep the faith, man. I completely understand that. It's like, mate, I might not look it or seem it, but I'm pretty exhausted, man. Like, yeah, I've gone through the ringer over the last few years.
We all have, mate.
Yeah,
It's has been
yeah,
very tiring, you know.
yeah, yeah. And just keeping up those same energy levels, especially in the context of positivity and bullishness and all that stuff, when it's just you're constantly being, getting hit with downside action. So, and just not even just downside action in our own stuff, but just crypto overall as well. And then obviously everything that happened last year, with Solana and just Jeet Central, every it's just every Tom, Dick, and Harry is a total degenerate now. But I get it. Like it's a casino. It's the
It's also
it's
exhausting from the perspective that we had the whole US election cycle and all the positivity that came out of that, and then like almost like an adrenaline dump, and then now we're in the aftermath of that, and we've just had like red for a while, and I think that's also exhausting. That after
yeah.
all that positivity
Yeah,
and
but the thing is, like that positivity is still continuing. Like we're still getting like
oh yeah,
one like news piece after another is constantly you think would be constantly magnifying and intensifying that bullish sentiment that you would think would start to incentivize more and more investors to come in and more retail to come in. Um, but I think also that a lot of people still like for whatever reason might still be sitting in stables and still sort of maybe they think that it can all either they think it's just being really generally bearish and it can go lower. They're just waiting for lower lows, before they actually jump in. But I don't really put too much weight to that. Like, how low do you want it to go? Well, are you sitting on the sidelines in stables, waiting for ETH to go to 1,000 before you start to load in? Like, I don't know.
do you think that's a possibility?
Of course, it's anything is a possibility, but so
Ash
I
says
mean,
T-Bird is always in my timeline beating the drums for Hex.
good to see Ash. I know you, man. I recognize you from the old days. You've been around a long time. Yeah, appreciate your support in the community along the way. Always in the chats, that's for sure. All the community chats, streaming chats. So, but man, like I reckon we can. It's up to you if you want to keep going a little bit longer.
I think
We
we've
can.
done well, man. We don't need to extend it out beyond where we feel it's pretty late where I am. It's probably similar to where you are.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, it's been good, man. Yeah, we've got to do it again sometime. Man, I like chatting with you. It's always interesting, and especially one thing before we finish up, this Johnny Chaos go off Twitter for a little while.
Yeah, he's back.
He's back.
Yeah.
And then we saw Funding Jim. So there's like, it's like something's going on with, OGs, like something
Yeah,
is
well,
shaking.
a lot. Well, just everything, like a lot of factors combined. People are really getting tested. Are
Yeah.
really getting
No, I
tested.
mean,
So,
by the way, I think Johnny Chaos is as solid as they come as far as a hexagon.
oh
I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
think
yeah.
anything's shaken Johnny out.
No,
um,
no, yeah,
he's
and
I think he just took a couple of days because I think if you get a bit of negativity on Twitter, I think
oh,
it can be.
well, I personally, I'm sort of aware of a certain reason why. It's an energetic thing, but if I went into it, like I might go over some people's heads, um, but yeah, like, but even putting that aside, like it can be very, and he's got a pretty sizable following on Twitter. He's got about 35K on there, so on his account. So, and he's got a very prominent mouthpiece. So
What do you
he's
think of this question by Doc Lover? Are OGs losing faith?
I think there'll be there'll be a small percentage. I don't know how small, but definitely a small percentage of OGs who are still around, that like genuinely in for the long haul. But a lot of them, I think a lot of the OGs would have either have dramatically reduced positions by now, or because they would have just either migrated elsewhere or just whatever.
As a function of the US dollar price, or as a function of how much hex they have?
As a function of how much hex they have, the hex positions. Well, I think this is just their overall positions in the whole RH ecosystem, whether it's hex, pulse hex, whatever, like in that whole hex even as well. Um, I think a lot of their positions will be majorly exhausted, or at least somewhat exhausted. And I think even just 6 to 12 months ago, I think some of the OGs that might have been bragging or soft bragging about their positions, by you get to sort of the stages now, probably not as much as you might think. But then there'll always be like the really big whales out there. Um, but at the end of the day, um, it's but mostly irrelevant whether they're losing faith or not, because the OGs from last site, the whole paradigm is completely different now. We've got a full ecosystem, a full like actual blockchain. The amount of participants that are in our ecosystem is much larger compared to what it was last cycle. You got multiple tickers. There's multiple sectors within the ecosystem itself, so it's completely different. So whether they're around or not, to me, is like it is what it is. Um,
So Doc Lover has asked another question. Do we Hex still have the pull to attract new users? I'll quickly answer, and then I'll throw it to
yeah,
you, T Bird. I think I think any crypto can have the pull to attract new users. You just need a few green candles, and
yep,
you'll start getting
I
new
100%
users.
second that. There is no better form of marketing than green candles.
Yeah.
Um,
So my short answer is yes. Uh, the real question is, when can we expect something like that to
yeah,
happen?
and let
Um,
me just speak just quickly, say this too, in the context of that question. We consistently, even to this point, even with all um, the the challenges that we've had to endure over the last few years, we've still got like a really solid quantity of live streamers, content creators, whether it's on Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, IG. There's heaps of us, and I've only just started my YouTube channel, even though I've been doing my thing on Twitter for years now. I think and I'm going to be part of that sort of that galvanization of trying to encourage newer people to start getting on the mic and start getting more vocal, and more active in in harnessing that pool to get people on. But of course, yeah, with these sorts of red candles, though, people are generally mentally and emotionally shot and won't necessarily have the fortitude and the strength to put themselves out there at this specific juncture. But when the sentiment shifts enough with the green candles, that will change. So,
Well, it's a lot easier to you know, plug in and go live when there's exciting green candles. When you're making all-time highs on live stream, that's a pretty exciting thing to be, especially if you're on with other people and you're like like I remember, just like for example the Hex Late Show when there were in 2021 green candles on live stream making all-time highs on live stream, and it was fun. It was so much fun because it was just happening live. Um, so that will happen again at some stage. I expect it to happen again. I've got no crystal ball, but I do definitely expect it to happen
yeah.
again. And when it does, I mean, let's not forget that the all-time high for Pulse Chain Hex is like 4 cents.
Yeah, and also just to address this question that we have on the screen, is the chain dated? In my opinion, absolutely not, because when Pulse Chain launched, in the context of Bitcoin, it was basically in the middle of the bear cycle, middle of the bear market. Pulse Chain hasn't actually had any kind of bull run at all. So Pulse Chain hasn't actually experienced a bull cycle yet, and it's not even 2 years old either. So, and like less than 2 years is still, um, by definition, very young for a blockchain.
It's a first
Yeah,
cycle.
first cycle, and compared to all the other chains that are out there, they're all way more dated than Pulse Chain. A lot of them.
And and as far as updates go, updates can be applied later on when they've been properly vetted.
Yeah,
So that's not to say that Ethereum doesn't properly vet them on their test nets. However, if you have the luxury of seeing Ethereum apply them to their main net and then see how they go, see how it affects things, why not? Why not? Why not use that to your advantage?
yeah. All right, man. Um,
Yeah, it's thanks, dude. Thanks for coming on at last. It was really a last minute stream that we decided to do, but that's awesome. And just I guess before we close out, Ash says just a reminder: crypto cycle is not just for price, but also for rotation of sentiment and investors. They cycle like clockwork.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty good
That's a
comment,
good point.
man. A good comment for us to end on. And yeah, T Bird, once again, thanks. Thanks to everyone in the chat. We really appreciate you guys coming along and commenting and asking your questions. Please make sure you like and subscribe before you go. And T Bird, can you just show your channel, your new YouTube podcast channel that you've just created?
Yep. So again, my new YouTube channel is called the T-Bird Podcast. It is the link is so it's yeah so it's at t-bird 369. So if you go on YouTube and just type in at t-bird 369, you'll find it that way. Or if you just go to my Twitter, which is at the real T-Bird Hex, jump in there and you'll see in my bio the YouTube link to my podcast, my YouTube channel there. And just want to quickly say that I really appreciate you 43 for having me on your channel. Yeah, huge amount of respect and honor to you for being so consistent for so many years, putting out content for the Hex community and Pulse Chain. And
I appreciate that, mate. It's
it's yeah, and really like solidly representing the Aussie Hexagon crew since the very beginning. So
it's been fun, man. It's been fun, and I tweeted earlier this week that if you're not having fun when you're live streaming and you're doing it out of some sort of weird sense of obligation, you probably shouldn't be live streaming. You know, live stream if you are going to enjoy it. And I have, always enjoyed streaming with the guys and girls.
Yeah.
And I've enjoyed this one as well, mate. It's
Yeah,
been
and
good.
I'd be definitely keen to sort of do even more streams like this with some of the OG Aussie guys and girls who used to be on in the old days.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We can definitely tee that up for, excuse the pun.
Yeah, cool, brother.
All right, guys.